So now we are going to get into the next panel, which I will put my hat of a moderator. And we are going to talk about how all the regulation and the national recovery plans are helping the European Union lead the data economy, not only here, but also globally. And for that, I would like to welcome on stage my fellow colleague Alberto Palomo, who is the Chief Data Officer of Spain, the government of Spain. And don't worry, this is not going to be an Alberto's panel. There will be also other people coming live on video, and also a few videos from two of our political leaders in the European Union. So as you keep on taking the seats, please. I know coffee is interesting, but this, I promise, is going to be even more interesting because we have Alberto Palomo here. He has some announcements to make. But before we go into Alberto's announcements, I will like to play a video from Franziska Brandner, which is the Parliamentary State Secretary at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action of Germany, who has sent some regards and some messages to us.
Ladies and gentlemen, glad to be here with you, even though I can only be with you virtually. This event falls into an interesting period of time. We have now a Data Act concluded, the AI Act negotiations are on their peak, and hopefully where Gaia-X starts showing visible results on the market. And of course, these initiatives are intertwined. They must go hand in hand to create a Europe that is innovative, competitive, and at the same time more resilient, more sovereign from a digital perspective. Data, or rather, data ecosystems are essential for the development of AI. And Gaia-X provides solutions to create ecosystems in which data can be shared in a trustworthy manner. And I'm glad we have just successfully terminated the negotiations on the Data Act, and the Data Governance Act was also agreed in 2022. With these acts, we now have a solid regulatory framework for a robust European data economy where data can be shared and used effectively. These legal acts aim to assure responsible data use, as well as data provision and access to leverage its innovation potential. The Data Act complements the DGA, and thanks to our joint efforts, the Data Act will also increase data availability and the responsible use of data. The regulation finally grants users access to the data that they generate when using smart products and services. This can be the basis for new innovative services and products. It therefore holds ample opportunities for both industry and SMEs, but also for end users. And while promoting data sharing, the Data Act also effectively protects trade secrets and thereby strengthens the European single market for data. The AI Act is in its final stages of negotiation. We are building an innovation-friendly legal framework for AI, the first in the world, that doesn't impose too much bureaucracy, especially for SMEs and startups, but still creates a trustworthy AI made in Europe. Foremost, however, we see the potential AI has regarding benefits for companies and our society, and for the help it can provide when dealing with big problems like climate change or pandemics. And on the practical side, there is Gaia-X. Germany and France have initiated this project together in 2019. Our goal was to create an innovative European data ecosystem that enables the development of competitive and scalable data and AI applications. Gaia-X has the potential to be a real success. It has gathered a large community that takes the spirit and the ideas even beyond its organizational boundaries. Technical results are already there and hopefully soon even more deployed on the ground. We're looking forward to a broader market uptake during the coming years. And in this context, it is important to mention the Gaia-X use cases that we, Germany, support with public funding. Some of them especially focus on AI, For example, Gigant that develops an AI-based maintenance service in the area of Industry 4.0. Gaia-X for future mobility in the area of mobility, as well as OpenGPT-X developing large language models for Europe. These are actual test beds to see and implement what, on the one hand, regulation provides for, and on the other hand, the solutions that Gaia-X has already developed. So to sum up, we are glad that with the new regulatory framework on data, on AI, and also the tools we do provide by Gaia-X, Europe will benefit from efforts that go hand in hand. And we are optimistic that this paves the ground for better and more data sharing, as well as AI development and uptake in Europe. I'm looking forward to soon having those Gaia-X labels so that we can create even more trust and confidence by our companies in data sharing and data using. Thank you so much. All the best to you.
Well, thank you to Franziska Brandner from Germany, and I would like now to give the online floor to the video of Joan Noël Bagot, the Minister Delegate for Digital from the French Ministry of the Economy, Finance and Industrial and Data and Digital Sovereignty. Sorry.
Dear Secretary of State Brandner, dear Secretary of State Campolargo, dear Deputy Minister Valentini, dear friends of the European industry, dear friends of the academic research community, ladies and gentlemen, I could not be with you today in Alicante, but I'm very honored to say a few words on behalf of the French government for this Gaia-X 4th summit, which gives us the opportunity to witness how much progress we've made all together towards our common digital future. In just a few years, the EU has reached a major milestone in the implementation of an ambitious, comprehensive data strategy, in particular through the Data Governance Act and the soon-to-be-adopted Data Act. In addition, the EU is now actively working on the challenges raised by AI, notably a new horizontal regulation which is currently being negotiated between co-legislators under the Spanish presidency, with lots of issues to deal with in a consistent manner. Let me just mention a few examples of how these regulations will impact for good the data economy and in particular stakeholders' activities. The Data Governance Act will enable data holders and data users to unlock the innovative potential of industrial data with the support of labeled and neutral intermediation services who can help them build data marketplaces. The Data Act will put a final stop to unfair contractual terms in B2B data sharing partnerships, especially in relation to big tech major companies. It will also simplify customers' everyday lives by removing financial barriers when choosing a new cloud service provider. In the field of AI, our first priority should be to do all our possible to win the current innovation race. Europe should first become a leader in AI so we can preserve our values. Our goal is to promote a European regulatory framework that is staunchly pro-innovation, adaptable and future-proof. However, these new regulations would not be impactful without the very active European ecosystem spearheaded by Gaia-X that thrives to gather users and solution providers around this central idea of data sharing. I'm thinking, for instance, of our European cloud service providers, but also small and large companies specialized in data such as Gaia-X, Clerop and Amadeus, to name a few. I'm thinking also of the active commitment of several actors who are too many to be named here, but I want to mention the automobile industry, energy producers, transport and mobility businesses, and of course the aerospace industry with Catherine Gestin from Airbus now being the chairwoman of Gaia-X. All the energy that was put in common made it possible to produce important deliverables for the EU as a whole, such as Gaia-X policy rules, the Gaia-X Federation services, on which the European project Simple will be able to build, or more recently the Gaia-X Digital Clearing House. Many other successful projects also show evidence of the very dynamic nature of Gaia-X, such as AgData Hub, the data intermediation platform dedicated to the agricultural and agri-food sectors in France and Europe, whose entire technical architecture is now compliant with the de facto Gaia-X standard. Other examples can be mentioned, such as Gaia-X, which is dedicated to transport and mobility data, Prometheus in the field of education, and Omega-X, which is strongly supported by energy industry. Of course, we must bear in mind that a successful data exchange process goes together with trust. Trust in the protection of business interests, and especially trust in the protection of our company's sensitive information. To this end, the forthcoming European Cyber Certification Scheme for Cloud Services, EUCS, must provide safeguards against illegal access to data, including for the most sensitive data based on extraterritorial legislation. Now it is time to turn our attention to the future and to look at all the new opportunities that the new EU regulation will bring for data sharing, and to create the conditions of a stronger, more competitive and innovative EU. Let me go back to the title of this panel for a minute. The question was, will the EU lead the data economy in the end? I don't read the future, but I know what we have in the present. What we do have here and now is a collective mindset with a common motivation to work together in order to better value the data and to facilitate its use for innovative purposes. Will the EU lead the data economy in the end? I don't know. But can the EU do it? I truly believe so, if we're able to stay and act together to shape our common future in the digital and data world. This common set of regulations represents a unique opportunity for the European Union to truly enter the race for innovation as they pave the way for a harmonized and secure framework for data sharing, as well as a pro-innovation and virtuous usage of artificial intelligence technologies. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all a very pleasant panel.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are here all very positive that we will lead the data economy globally. Now I would like to give the floor online to Mario Campolargo, the Secretary of State for Digitalization and Administrative Modernization of the Government of Portugal, who is live connected through Zoom. Welcome, Mario.
No. It's just a pleasure to be with you. And Alberto, thanks very much. And thanks to all the Gaia team for inviting me to be with you. And I was listening to the two interventions. And at the same time that I welcome this participation remotely, and I apologize for not being able to be with you, I would like to greet all the speakers in this panel, fellow Secretaries of State and Ministers, and to recognize the importance of being here today, looking at data and looking at the aspects that Gaia-X is putting in place. And like the Secretary of State from France just referred, what we see here is not just a set of political acts that look to transform Europe in a leader in terms of data, the use of data, a sovereign use of data, an ethical use of data, but at the same time having initiatives like Gaia-X, having the possibility to test in practice how these conceptual frameworks, how these legal frameworks can be put in practice. And we could tackle it from different points of views. We could look into the digitalization of economy at large, the use of industrial data. It is still very, very striking that when we look about this, the power of data, we still realize that we are using only 20% of the data generated by industry in the European Union. And if it is true that data is somehow the essence of this new economy, if we are not able to use higher percentages of the data that is produced to make sure that we can take political, public or private strategic decisions from industries or from the governments based on data, then it is an untapped potential that we have here. As it is an untapped potential if we don't make this data available to others through open portals, through transparency portals for our citizens to see, for example, how the public administration is using their own data. And needless to refer to the various acts that we are putting in place in Europe. What I'm looking to the digital decade, all the aspects of data, artificial intelligence, interoperability, and cybersecurity. This is an ensemble of acts that mean a lot when we analyze each one of them de per se, but whose potential appears when we are looking to them globally, because they mutually reinforce each other. We cannot use data if we don't trust the use of data. We cannot use sensitive data, private data, if we don't have elements of sovereignty. And in particular, if we look to aspects of interoperability, we look, for example, to artificial intelligence to help us to go out of legacy systems or different formats used for data to make sure that we can make sense of the common use of that data. This is particularly acute when we think about the public administrations, where the citizens do expect us to be able to treat their data in a trusted way, in an interoperable way, to make sure that we can use different types of data to make the services provided to the citizens and to the enterprises more fit to their demands at a certain moment in time. Nothing that the private sector is not doing, but with an important difference, is that the level of responsibility and role model that public administrations have to give in the ethical use of data, into the responsible use of data, into supporting innovation without creating situations of undue exploitation of private or of data whose ownership is not taken into consideration. All of these aspects challenge us, and that's why we, at political level, and I take the opportunity to thank the presidency of Spain for the strong commitment and engagement in trying to complete some of these processes that we have with us for some time. What we are looking all together is to enable the full potential of data-driven innovation to be realized. What we are looking is to opportunities at European level to reuse data, to remove obstacles to the development of this European data economy that we are all trying to build, a data economy that is vivid, that is responsible, that is ethical, that goes along with all the principles that we defend in the European Union, and that ensures data sovereignty while balancing the innovation, creating an economy that is vibrant, while at the same time ensuring that our societies are inclusive and equitable. Let me tell you that when we come to data and to the data spaces, we are particularly appreciative of the technological developments, of the achievements of the Gaia-X, to make sure that we can, at national and at European level, benefit from the data spaces. I remember that in Portugal we have been discussing, in the context of the hub of the Gaia-X, how can we be proactive, not just at national level, but at European level, in areas, for example, like the buildings. This is a challenge, a political challenge for all the states in Europe, is a political challenge for us in Portugal, simplifying licensing and using building information modeling is all about using data, is all about sharing data, is all about making sure that the private investors and the public that have to license and put sometimes complex administrative processes at the services of the investors and the individuals get to a common space where the processes are simplified, where the data is used and reused, where the developments in terms of the design of the buildings, the approval and the construction maintains a continuum that goes much beyond the construction up to the enablement of maintenance throughout the lifetime of those important infrastructures for our society. So that's where Gaia-X comes, and that's where the convergence between the political concepts, the frameworks, the acts that we are trying to put in Europe comes into place. And that's why I'm so grateful to be here today talking to you. Look, we as public administrations, we need to be looking to keywords like open, transparency, flexibility, engagement of users, in the very same way that the private sector has been looking to those keywords to establish a fair relation with their users. And our industrial forces in Europe that build so important new infrastructures, new products, some of them, if not all of them, engaged in the use of software to treat, to process data, and therefore building this data economy. What we are trying with those acts is maintaining the right balance between technology, innovation, an economy that is striving to be growing, and at the same time maintaining vivid in our mind the aspects of sovereignty and the aspects of the values that we all cherish in Europe. Interoperability is as important as data governance. Cybersecurity is important as AI. And just tackling all those disruptive technologies, we will be able to build the foundation and to embed, obviously, in all the work that you are doing in Gaia and so many others are doing in Europe, these elements of the innovation, the disruption, that maintaining the values of Europe will making Europe striving in terms of a vibrant economy. So on my side in Portugal, where we want and we are trying to apply all those principles, where in practice we are aligned pre-acts to the concepts that we are going to defend in political terms for those acts. We share this with so many other countries in Europe. And what I wanted to leave as a final message is for Europe to strive in an economy that is digital, in an economy that is growing, in an economy that is creating wealth for its citizens, and that is inclusive. It's only achievable when we get together, when we share our views, when we cooperate with each other. And Gaia-X, being an endeavor that started amongst a few leading countries, but is now having a footprint of all Europe, is a structural element in this strategy for Europe. So thank you for inviting me. Thanking you for allowing me to do these very general reflections that I'm sure that serve as an encouragement for all of you to continue working actively in the dossiers that you have as your agenda and delivering more and more results to the benefit of all Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary of State from Portugal. I will ask you to stay a bit longer until the end of the panel, if that's possible. And now I would like to welcome on the stage on Zoom, Valentino Valentini, Deputy Minister from the Ministry of Enterprises and Made in Italy from the Government of Italy. Welcome, Mr. Valentini.
Thank you very much. I hope you hear me right. Intervening after the four distinguished speakers before me allows me not to repeat the things that have said, but rather to stress the points that have been made. The first point that we're seeing is that Europe is creating, or is about to complete, the EU single market for data. And we've created the necessary regulatory framework, which is fundamental for the development of the data economy. I'd like to spend a word here. I think that we have to realize that nowadays all our actions are turned into data, and the computing power is such that enables us to use, gather, and gain more value from this data gathering than ever before. But as the previous speaker says, in Europe we only use 20% of the data available. That is a very important aspect to be considered, because it shows to us the power that we have to unharness. Certainly, having created this data framework, we found ourselves, though, in a global dilemma. The Europeans have decided to regulate this space, whereas the other nations, the leading nations of the world, tend to use another system, that of self-regulation. And this clash is present throughout. During the G7 on digital, the digital G7 in Japan, an expression was coined that was data free flow with the trust, which I think encompasses actually what we're trying to do here. The element is data is being produced every day. Data has to be regulated, but unimpeded in its flow. Data has to flow with trust. That is fundamental. Trust, it means that your data are under your control, that your data is not being misused, that your data is not stolen, and at the same time, that there is no cyber attacks, and there is a possibility of controlling the way your data is being used. In this situation, where we see the difference between what is called the Brussels consensus and the, I would call it the global self-regulating consensus we're going through, comes Gaia-X. Gaia-X is the European approach. It's a unique and peculiar European approach, because the fundamental element of Gaia-X is that you keep control of the data and you control the way the data is used. That creates an extra element of trust, and it starts especially within the industrial world, because you can then share with the people you trust the fundamental data that are necessary for whole supply chains to be developed, as it was seen before in the building sector. And we heard our French colleague saying that starting from the automotive sector, it's now been extended to health, to transport, and we come in to understand the importance of our own European system of making things. And I would like add another factor to this. As I said, there's this tension in the world between the self-regulating world and the normative framework we're creating in Europe. But if we go to the next step we're all concerned about, that is artificial intelligence, which is the new frontier. Actually, it's not even, it's already here. And we know how important it is to use the power of artificial intelligence, but to prevent artificial intelligence from the dangers it's been talked about. There's a wide debate nowadays. Well, the key of artificial intelligence, especially of generative artificial intelligence has been there already a few years. What is now striking the people is the generative artificial intelligence, the fact that you can interact with computer using what looks like a logical system, the application of the Turing test, the fact that you think that you're dealing with conscious computers. Well, in all of this, the key is the data you train your models on. The power and the success of artificial intelligence lies, of generative artificial intelligence, of large language models, lies on the quality of the data. And that's exactly what Gaia-X stands for. And I hope that I use this as almost as a paradox, but I think that if Europeans want to really be at the head of the system, we should be able to create some sort of Gaia-X, that is to say, Gaia-X AI. Provide a quality of data that is outstanding, provide a quality of data, language models, which you continue to own the data and know how it is used, so to arrive to large language models that are extremely trustful, and that creates a new frontier. To close my argument, I fully agree with what's been said by the previous speakers and what is the spirit of our being here together. I fully agree on the fact that we must proceed and start to come up with substantial results in the use of Gaia-X in this case, and show the difference and the real quality of the free flow with trust of data that is the European way of doing it. And thirdly, that we have to start looking and thinking how this very same creation of spaces, of data spaces, the European way, can be applied to artificial intelligence and to the training of generative AI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister from the Government of Italy. I would also like you to stay a bit longer until the end of the panel. Because now, I mean, you have seen our political leaders from 4 countries, from 4 member states talk about what we have done until now at the European level, which is all the regulations on data, on cybersecurity, on digital services as well, even though they have not necessarily referred to that, and what is still to come, which is the AI Act. And it's one piece of legislation that us, from the presidency of Spain, we are heavily negotiating with the Parliament in our position of president of the position of all the member states, and we see how Data Governance Act paved the way for a future artificial intelligence that it's trustworthy, but it also gives enough way for people to innovate and to be leaders in the future of, I don't know, generative AI or any other type of neural networks that come into play. In this regard, I would like to mention that and to welcome on stage Alberto Palomo, which is the Chief Data Officer of Spain, because he has put a paper together on a future vision on how all this work that the European Union is doing on legislating the digital sector should be put forward in the future and should be influenced and should be developed. And this is one of the achievements that we would like to put as achievements of the presidency of the Spanish of the Spanish presidency of the Council. It's a statement by the presidency. It's not a political declaration by member states, but we think this could be a way forward that will also help Gaia-X and all the community of the data economy ecosystem get together and get concrete and implementable on the task that we have ahead. This statement that is going to be published after the summit is finished. It's also supported by the Secretary of State for Digitalization and AI, Carme Artigas, who was unable to come here today because of other commitments with the recently appointed UN high-level board on AI that she is co-chairing. But she would like to know, for all of you to know that she's fully on board with this vision and with our future of work together on this matter. I welcome Alberto Palomo on stage.
Thank you, Alberto. So Gaia-X, right? So we had Secretary of State Campo Largo, as well as the Vice Minister, Deputy Minister in France. Clearly, what is in governments for us to come into this? Traditionally, you think of IT as a very private sector sort of endeavor, and the reality is that, like our boss, Deputy Prime Minister of Spain, Calviño, we saw yesterday on the video and this morning too. When the current government took over, Spain had really advanced a lot, and as far as telecommunications and bandwidth, but there was maybe not as advanced on the topic of digitalization, right? And so the creation of the State Secretariat for Digitalization and AI was new also in the title. It was probably one of the first high-level offices in Europe that carried the word AI, and so I came in about 2.5 years ago with precisely what Nadia Calviño said yesterday, to kind of create and coordinate a national level roadmap for the data economy, which hadn't really existed before. And I've actually worked in artificial intelligence almost 10 years ago, right? So to the point of Valentino Valentini, AI is all about data. So it made a lot of sense to fall under the Secretary of State for Digitalization and AI. But something happened along the way in these last 2.5 years, which, I mean, I saw it coming, but I probably wasn't able to really understand the shakeup that it produced. And I'm talking, of course, of the large language models and ChatGPT, you know, that took completely the world by storm. And in a matter of weeks, there were 100 million users worldwide, right? And this has, you know, obviously the work in AI had started before, but I think this was a real pivotal moment in realizing that it's not the future, it's the present, it's here, and it's obviously could shake up very heavily our societies and our businesses, you know, and not necessarily in a bad way, also in a positive way, right? Because there's huge productivity gains from artificial intelligence if properly harnessed, right? So that's where the kind of the two lines of work that Secretary of State Artigas had put under her realm, you know, on the one hand, the data economy, and also the Deputy Director General for AI, you know, that it's a very active unit within our State Secretary. So, you know, with the advent of ChatGPT and these large language models really being deployed, those two worlds sort of collided. And what I want to present to you today, which is just the statement that Alberto was referring to, is the vision that I see, that we see in Spain, for how all the work and all the discussions we've had these last couple of days about Gaia-X relate to artificial intelligence, but also to cloud, you know, to federated cloud, which often it's been in silos, and people think, well, this is just the infrastructure side. Well, if you look at it, large language models or any kind of deep neural networks, you can't separate the infrastructure from the actual models, you know. And I'll present this in a second. This is the only slide I have, right? But Alberto really said it, you know. I like the title. It's a European model from data to value, you know. And in this case, it's specifically talking about AI-generated value. But there's many other enabling technologies. It's just that AI is extremely, well, it's taking the world by storm, right? And where obviously data plays a major role, right? So if you look at the left, you know, data projects, they've existed for all I remember, right? And there's many different initiatives and projects. In fact, when I first came into this position that I had, and I had to organize a little bit the Spanish strategy around data, one of the first people I called was who's now the president of the Spanish Gaia-X hub, because he had a lot of history with you know, activities like the Big Data Value PPP, and I see Anna there. So obviously data and big data and using data had been on the minds of both the European Commission officials and politicians, but also the private sector, right? And so what we have found, and that's my background, I'm a data architect, is, you know, you have a lot of data projects, there's a lot of initiatives which has been rather successful, but you know, they're bounded by their own scale, by their own limit, you know, by their own standards, their own data sets that they're dealing with, by their own technologies, obviously, but also the business and regulatory strategies and frameworks, you know. So it's not uncommon to find silos, you know. Even within a single organization, I've seen data silos. And that's where the power of data spaces comes about, right? Because to me, if you abstract away all the complexity, which obviously is underneath, what you really have is a rightly governed data exchange, you know? And by data exchange, I mean data is reusable and you don't lose, you know, if I give you this mic, I no longer have the mic. But if I give you part of my data, we both can benefit from that data. It's it's an unrivaled resource. So really, the whole commissions and even the world organizations about the data economy and the power of the data economy, it's there, right? But how do you actually create the data economy in an interconnected way? Well, that's where data spaces come about, you know. And I talk about having a common regulation, a common really standard for a coherent cross-governance, right? The technology is not the difficulty. There are things to solve, but really it's about coherent cross-governance, right? How to all speak the same language and have the same incentives to be able to share data. And that's where I think this concept of trusted federated cloud really comes about. Why federated? Well, because when we talk about artificial intelligence or even other aspects, you can't put all the data in a single monolithic IT infrastructure, right? So the idea is that to really harness the power, you interconnect, and you interconnect dynamically different IT infrastructures, right? This is a completely different model from the model of let's build something really, really big that scales, but it's all underlying a single monolithic infrastructure and semantic model. This is about how to federate and really take power of communications, right? And then the second part is the trusted cloud. Because yes, you can dynamically interconnect, you can technically interconnect, and that way you can solve the barrier of interconnecting data sets. But if you don't have that trust, that it's been the core discussion of these 2 days, well, you won't have operational guarantees. And anyone that has worked in an actual business company with business continuity plans, that's critical, right? You need operational guarantees because whatever can fail will probably fail at some point. And so that trusted element of the federated trusted cloud, it's really what facilitates compliance, peace of mind, and also it allows to scale up the data economy. And what is that useful for? Well, data-driven innovation. And I want to bring you just one of them, which is the AI, because, well, it's a poster child example of where data, Valentini said it, right? What are the 3 things that have really spurred the revolution in artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence? Well, there's 3 things. One is the actual model that you're training, which is completely trial and error. It's based on a paper from 1986. So there's a lot of experimentation, and people come up with more exotic architectures for neural networks. When I left the field of AI, we had 5 to 10 layers of being trained one after the other, and it's very heuristical. You try to see what works, and obviously you need a lot of funding for that. These models keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so there's a huge need of computational, really large computational models, a lot of need for high-performance computing and parallel computing. And also you need a lot of data. You need a lot of data. And so what I'm calling here the European way or the European paradigm is try to make sure that that governance of that data has been taken into account, which I don't know if it has been with these current models that we're dealing with. In fact, some data protection agencies, like the Italian one, flagged it immediately for IP infringement and not following GDPR. So really, to me, going from the second column to the third is, look, data spaces are a uniquely European invention and advancement. And I think they can really play a critical role in correctly governing the data that trains artificial intelligence models. Because not only that will increase the critical mass that we're dealing with, it will connect those in hyper-distributed and heterogeneous data sources, but it will also provide at least a possibility to explain why your algorithm is behaving in a certain way and why data is being used at least what type of data is being used, right? And that's where the bottom end, where data value really happens, This statement is meant to be sort of an informal call to action to all those relevant stakeholders, There's a ton of European, both at the member state, at the private sector level, and also sponsored by the Commission and the Parliament, programs and initiatives for data, and I think they're spot on, but I think there's a need to orchestrate or coordinate them in a manner that, these are very complex topics, and you tend to think of the cloud on the one side and data and AI, but they're all extremely heavily interconnected, and that's exactly what needs to be done to harness the power of AI in the future, right? And what I'm calling for is have in mind that the ultimate goal, at least for a government, is to have a consistent and reproducible model for innovation and growth. That should be our goal, at least to us from the government, right? And that reproducible and consistent model for innovation and growth, by definition, by the way it's leveraging data spaces, it will rely on those European values. And this is the whole discussion of trustworthy in the context of Gaia-X, right? And I heavily think that this is a value proposition for European reindustrialization and really growth, and that it takes into account things like the Spanish presidency is talking about open strategic autonomy and making sure that we rely on technologies and processes that respect our autonomy.
Thank you, Alberto. I believe that if we take one message, is trusted cloud and trusted data gets you trusted AI. But you need to implement all this legislation, you need to implement all this governance, and possibly all the data ecosystem of Europe, or data economy ecosystem of Europe, can get us to this trustworthy AI. With this, I would like to call on our Secretary of State from Portugal and Deputy Minister from Italy, whether they have any reactions to the presentation that we have just put forward by our Chief Data Officer, Alberto Palomo, or any other type of comments, because I think it ties very nicely with what you come in your own statements. Maybe you can start, Secretary of State, from Portugal, Mario Campo Largo.
Well, thanks again, and let me greet in particular Valentino Valentini, Deputy Minister. It's a pleasure to be with you in this forum. What I found interesting on all the presentations is this reflection on how different models of legal frameworks can operate in Europe or elsewhere. The particular concern between creating and developing economy and innovation, while in our case respecting a number of principles and guiding principles for the activity around data. Data and AI, and I thank the Deputy Minister from Italy because he brought very much this question of generative AI into the picture. Data, especially when we are talking about the trustworthy use of data, is very much amplified by AI. That's why I think that Alberto made this connection that I also tried to do. Every single regulation is important, but it's the ensemble of the regulations that becomes really meaningful. Every single technology is important. High-performance computing, data analytics, AI, cybersecurity, they are all important on their own. But if we really want to make the type of European way towards innovation and responsible use of data, then we have to take all those aspects at the same time. Yes, the picture becomes a bit more complex. Yes, if you can only leave out of the market, you disregard a number of principles. If you want to leave out of a state perspective, you disregard a number of other principles. So yes, our journey is probably more, I would say, complexified by this. But what I know is that there is no evolution of societies, and we speak now about global perspective. Societies do not evolve when they fear technology and when they at the same time disregard the principles, the philosophical principles, the ethical principles, the way we live in society. When we compromise one or the other, then the future is not the one that we want to be. And so it's getting this logic of embedding one in each other that will make us in a safe journey to the future. And if sometimes we believe that we are developing a little bit slower than others, and when sometimes we look to, okay, maybe we could flexibilize here, Now look to the global perspective right now, the geopolitical challenges that we have. Where is the strategic autonomy? Where are we being able to make an equitable and inclusive development of our societies based precisely in the innovation? And that's the big challenge. That's a challenge for the leaders, and that's where Europe has to promote itself, not just as a follower, not just doing the thing as anybody else can do, but leading the way into the future, leading the way into a way trustworthy use of data, use of generative AI for what is good for the society, and promoting this balance, striking this balance that brings us into a brighter and better world for us. Focus on the human values, on our societies, develop economically, but inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary of State. Deputy Minister from Italy, would you have any remarks to also mention?
How could not I have remarks after the speech of our friend from Portugal? He introduced the other element that was left out of the picture, which is the ethics, the values. We have data and we have values. And putting the two together is probably the only solution we can have. We cannot anticipate where this fast development is going. What we can anticipate is the fields of ethics, how it is going to be applied, the manner in which it's going to be applied, the set of values that have to define that. So I fully agree, and I think the anthropocentric, this word which means putting man at the center of technology is certainly the way forward. But having said that, I would like also to react to what the Spanish presidency put forward. And to tell you that I agree so much that I think that I could have written myself what was said. I think we both said the same thing without having talked to each other before. And I think that you put it very well. Trusted cloud plus trusted data, which means then training the LLMs on a trusted set, will give rise to a trusted AI. And this is probably the European way forward. And I would just conclude with another remark. The fact that we in Europe are leading the way in the legal and regulatory framework is setting what is called, I used before the term that is used in America in a derogatory way, the Brussels consensus. It means we are one of the largest markets, we are at the forefront in the legal regulation of this new phenomenon, and we set an example, and we set how we have to go forward. So I think that's the way we have to continue. We must be aware of our responsibility, and at the same time I think that putting together the spirit behind Gaia-X, we can really create what I'm not able to put it graphically, but I would call GAI/X. That would be then the next and European contribution to this new world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. I don't know if anyone from the public would like to say something, because we have 7 more minutes to go before you close. 6 minutes. Okay. Well, so if someone wants to say something, we can pass a mic, I guess, from the stewards, no? If nobody wants to say anything, okay, we can go to the closing remarks, but I would like to highlight that this statement by the Presidency is also supported by the data economy ecosystem of the European Union, by some of the CEOs of Gaia-X, of International Data Spaces Association, the European Data Spaces Support Center, and also other associations at the level of Spain, like the Gaia-X Hub Spain, Celia and Planetic, and some other regional associations, and the Big Data Value Association at the European level. To all of you, we thank you deeply that we can get together with these papers as a starting point to build the future of the data economy and the AI in Europe. And now, Alberto, if you want to do some closing remarks.
Very, very shortly, really. I mean, I don't think this is necessarily, I mean, it's officially a statement from the Spanish presidency, but I think it hopes, anyway, to reflect what I have learned over the last 2.5 years within the European ecosystem. I mean, I think this paper tries to, or the statement tries to reflect some of the thoughts and conversations I've had with some of you guys here and some of the co-signers, you know. I came 2.5 years ago to try to provide a little bit of coherence and clarity to the Spanish government's data economy roadmap, you know, and I found a very active system in Europe, you know, but a complex one, right? With a lot of people, with a lot of projects. I mean, I'm extremely thankful to two things. One is to a lot of the Horizon 2020 projects that started, you know, 6-7 years ago, and that were the kind of the seed of where we are now, and also to the Data Space Business Alliance, which, you know, the 4 main organizations, because that's made my life a lot easier. You know, it's harder to navigate a lot of these, as with most, I think, important endeavors. At the beginning, you have a divergence, an explosion of ideas, and then it tends to converge. Otherwise, it goes nowhere, right? So I'm calling this statement is nothing but, I think, a call to the whole ecosystem, from the ecosystem, you know, even if it's signed by my boss and by me and co-author or co-sponsored, signed really by the ecosystem, of a call for convergence and to not lose the sight into what we're really after, which is to produce a truly European movement that it's once in a lifetime opportunity, you know. The internet boom completely changed the business ecosystem, and well, there's no doubt about who won that. So I'm hoping that Europe can play a very strong role in the, you know, the AI/data, you know, era.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alberto, and thank you especially to Deputy Minister from Italy, Mr. Valentini, and Secretary of State, Mr. Campo Largo from Portugal, for staying with us here, and we keep in touch in order to get also at the institutional level a common vision for this matter. Thank you all for your attention and for your time.